The glass shattered before Mia even opened her eyes. She sat straight up in bed, heart slamming against her ribs, the sound still ringing in the dark. A plate, maybe. Or a cup. She had gotten good at identifying the crashes by their pitch. The high, bright crack of a glass, the lower explosion of a dish, the dull thud of something that wasn't supposed to break but did anyway. She had been cataloging these sounds for 3 years, since she was 5 years old, the way some kids collected stamps or baseball cards. She pulled her knees to her chest. The sheets were damp. She had been sweating in her sleep, even though the night was cool. September in their neighborhood always smelled like cut grass, and something burning off in the distance. And it drifted now through the gap at the bottom of her window, and she breathed it in carefully, the way she had learned to breathe when she was trying not to cry. "I don't ask for much," her father said. His voice carried the way it always did. When he had been drinking, not louder exactly, but denser, packed with something mean that needed somewhere to go. "One decent meal. Is that too much? Is that an unreasonable request?" "Daniel, I cooked this afternoon." Her mother's voice was the opposite of his. Kept small, kept careful. The way you handle something that can detonate. "The food is in the refrigerator. I told you it was in the refrigerator. I've been on my feet since 6 this morning. Don't make excuses." "I'm not making excuses. I'm 7 months pregnant, Daniel. You think I don't know how pregnant you are? You think I need to be reminded? My whole life is on pause because you're pregnant." A silence. Then, her mother's voice, even quieter. "Your whole life." "That's what I said." "Our daughter's in the next room," her mother said. "Please. Don't tell me about my daughter. Don't you dare." There was a crash. Different from the first one. Heavier. Mia got out of bed. She didn't decide to do it. Her body did it for her, the way a hand jerks back from a hot stove before the brain has finished processing the heat. She was standing on the cool hardwood floor in her socks before she had any plan at all. She pressed her ear to the door. "Dramatic," her father was saying. "Every single night with the drama, the moaning and the sighing, and the whole performance." "I'm not performing," her mother said. "I'm tired. I'm really, genuinely tired, Daniel. And I need you to..." "You need me to what? Huh?" "Say it." A pause. "I need you to be kind." Her mother's voice was barely above a whisper. "I need you to just be kind to me. For one night." Her father made a sound. It took Mia a moment to identify it. He was laughing. Not a big laugh. Not a jovial laugh. A short, contemptuous exhale, like the request was beneath him. Like the idea of being kind was so absurd that it only warranted a breath. "You're something else," he said. "You know that? You are really something else." Mia heard her mother move, the shuffle of feet, the creak of a floorboard, and then a sound that stopped her completely. It was a sound she had never heard before. Low, broken, wet, like the air being pressed out of something. And then her mother said, in a voice stripped of everything except pure animal fear, "Oh no, oh no, no, no." Mia threw open the door. She ran down the hall in her socks, sliding slightly on the turn, and stopped in the living room doorway. Her mother was on the floor, not fallen, not tripped, on the floor, on her side, one arm tucked beneath her, one hand pressed hard against her stomach. Her face was the color of old paper. Her eyes were wide and glassy, and her mouth was open, and she was breathing in shallow, rapid pulls, like she couldn't get enough air. There was blood on the floor, not a little. Enough that Mia could see it even in the dim light. A dark spread soaking through her mother's pajama pants, pooling on the linoleum. "Mom, Mia." Her mother's voice was strained, distant, like she was calling from somewhere far away. "Baby, go back to bed." "Daniel." Mia looked at her father. He was standing against the kitchen counter with a glass in his hand, watching. "Dad, call someone. She's bleeding. Call 911. He looked at her mother on the floor. He looked at the blood. He looked back at Mia. He shrugged one shoulder. "She's fine," he said. "She always does this. Turns every little thing into a production. She is not fine. Mia's voice came out sharper than she intended, sharper than she thought she was capable of. She's bleeding. There's blood on the floor. You have to call. Mia, go to your room. I won't. He looked at her then, really looked at her. His eyes were flat and cold in the way they got when he had passed a certain point in his drinking, past the angry stage and into the contemptuous stage, where nothing was worth his energy. Go to your room. On the floor, her mother made the sound again, that low, pressurized moan, and her hand tightened on her stomach, and she said, Please, please, someone call the baby. The baby is fine, her father said, not even looking down at her. Stop being dramatic. He turned his back and went to the refrigerator. He opened it. He stood there in the refrigerator light, looking at its contents. Like she wasn't there. Like the woman on the floor bleeding was furniture. Mia stood in the doorway and watched him and felt something happen inside her that she did not have words for. Something that was not quite rage and not quite grief and not quite terror, but some compound of all three. Something that burned in her chest and behind her eyes and in the palms of her hands. She looked at her mother. Her mother looked back at her. Her face was slick with sweat. Her lips were trembling. Go, her mother whispered. Not go to your room. Just go. Go get help. Mia went. She went back down the hall, moving fast and quiet, and grabbed her sneakers off the floor by her door. She didn't stop to untie them, just shoved her feet in, and grabbed the hoodie from her doorknob and ran for the back door. The night air hit her hard. Cold and damp, the grass wet under her sneakers. She ran without looking back, across her yard, through the gate at the side, out onto the sidewalk. She had a choice to make in about 3 seconds. She could run to a neighbor's house. She could find someone on the street. She could go to the payphone 2 blocks over and call 911 herself. She did none of those things. She went to Mr. Vito's door. She had thought about it sometimes, in the abstract, idle way you think about things you don't really expect to need. What she would do in an emergency. Who she would go to. Most of the neighbors she couldn't even name. There was the couple in the yellow house who argued all the time themselves. There was the family with the loud dogs. There was the old man who kept to himself and went to bed early and whose lights were never on after 9. And there was Mr. Vito. She didn't know much about him, just things she had observed, stored quietly, the way she stored everything. The black cars that came sometimes late at night, the men who showed up in pairs and stayed 20 minutes and left without looking around. The way people on the street nodded at him with something in their faces that wasn't quite fear, but wasn't quite not fear either. Something more like respect that had learned to keep its distance. The way he was always quiet, always composed, always watching everything without appearing to watch anything. Once when she was 6, she had chased a stray cat through his yard and he had found her there, crouched by the hedges, trying to coax it out from underneath. He hadn't told her to leave or asked her what she was doing in his yard. He had simply crouched down beside her, his knees creaking, and made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. And they had waited, the two of them, patient and still, until the cat picked its way cautiously forward. Then he had told her, quietly, without making a lesson of it, patience is better than chasing. What you want will come closer on its own if you don't frighten it. She hadn't forgotten that. She ran up his front walk and hit his door with both fists. Nothing. She hit it again, harder. The wood was solid under her knuckles and hurt a little, and she didn't care. A light came on somewhere inside the house. Then footsteps, unhurried but coming. Then the sound of a chain being drawn back. The door opened. Mr. Vito stood in the frame, in a dark robe, not quite awake, his silver hair slightly disheveled. He had his reading glasses on. He was holding a book, with his thumb still marking his page. He blinked at her. And then he stopped blinking and looked at her the way certain adults look at children when something in them shifts into attention, when the rest of the world stops mattering. He said, Mia. She said, "My mom is on the floor and she's bleeding and she's really pregnant, and my dad won't call anyone." She took a breath. He's laughing at her. She hadn't planned to add that last part. It came out on its own because it was the part that was still playing on a loop inside her head, the thing she couldn't look away from. Mr. Vito was very still for exactly 3 seconds. Then he said, "Come inside." "I can't. I have to go back. You coming inside does not stop me from going over there." His voice was patient, absolutely certain, not reassuring the way adults sometimes talk to children, performed, slightly hollow, but actually certain. In fact, it lets me move faster. "Come inside, sit down, and let me make a phone call." She stepped inside. He closed the door behind her. The house was neat and dim and smelled of leather and coffee and something faintly like candle smoke. It felt different from her own house. Quieter, but not in a bad way. Not the held breath quiet of a place where something was about to happen. Just quiet. He pointed at a chair in the front room, and she sat in it, perching at the very edge, because she could not have relaxed any part of her body, even if she had wanted to. He went to the kitchen. She heard him on the phone. She could not make out the words. His voice was too low, too controlled. He spoke for less than 2 minutes. There was a quality to the conversation she couldn't quite name. Not urgency exactly, but intention. Like every word had been pre-selected for a specific job and was doing it. When he came back, he was already pulling a jacket off a hook near the front door. He crouched down in front of her so they were eye level. It occurred to her that not many adults did that, came down to her height rather than making her come up to theirs. "Tell me exactly what you saw when you went into the room," he said. "Don't skip anything. Start from when you heard the first sound." So she told him. She told him about the crash that woke her up and recognizing the sound. She told him about standing at her door, listening. She told him about her mother's voice changing. That low, pressurized animal sound, and what it had done to her stomach when she heard it. She told him about running out of her room, about the hallway, about stopping in the living room doorway. She told him about the blood on the floor. She told him about her mother's hand on her stomach. She told him about her father at the refrigerator. And she told him about the laughing. Mr. Vito listened without moving. His face was controlled. She could see him keeping it controlled. But when she got to the laughing, something passed through his eyes, a stillness that was different from his regular stillness, colder. When she finished, he said, "How long has this been going on in your house?" Mia looked at her hands in her lap. "A long time." "Since before you can remember?" "Since I was 5, I think." "Maybe before, I don't remember before very well." He nodded once. Slowly, he stood. "An ambulance is already on its way for your mother," he said. "I called before I came back in here. They should be there in the next few minutes." He looked down at her steadily. "I'm going over there now. You are going to stay in this chair, and you are not going to open that door for anyone except me. Do you understand?" "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure your mother gets the help she needs," he said, "and I'm going to have a conversation with your father." "He won't listen. He'll listen," Mr. Vito said quietly. "To me." There was nothing boastful about it. No weight behind it trying to impress her. It was simply a statement of fact, the way you say the sun rises in the east. She believed it immediately, the way she believed true things. He went to the door. Then he stopped with his hand on the handle and looked back at her. "Mia." She looked up. "You did exactly the right thing coming. Here." She nodded. She didn't trust her voice right then. He went out into the dark. If you're watching this story and feeling something, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might just speak straight to your heart. Drop a comment below. Tell us what part got you. Every comment helps more people find us, and this community means everything. 3.5 miles away, in a 4th-floor apartment with a view of the water, Carmine Battaglia was not sleeping. He rarely did, at this hour. His mind was a machine that ran best in the quiet parts of the night, when everything else had gone still, and he could think without the friction of the day pressing in from all sides. He was 53 years old. He had silver temples and a scar on his left hand from a night in his 20s that he no longer spoke about. He was not a large man, but the men around him had learned, through observation and, in a few cases, more direct instruction. That size had very little to do with the particular quality of presence that Carmine Battaglia occupied a room with. He was reading when the call came. He saw the name and picked up immediately. Vito. We have a situation. My neighbor, the pregnant woman I mentioned to you in the spring. She's down, bleeding. Her husband left her on the floor and walked away. Carmine set his book on the table beside him, precisely the way he did everything. How far along? 7 months approximately. You've called an ambulance. First thing. Good. A pause. And the husband? Still in the house. Vito's voice was measured, steady. But Carmine had known Vito for over 20 years, and he heard what was underneath the steadiness. He needs to understand something tonight, Carmine, clearly and finally, in terms that stay with him. Carmine was quiet for a moment. The little girl who came to you, he said. You mentioned her? 8 years old, ran across the yard in the dark with no plan except getting help for her mother. No shoes properly on, no idea what she was walking into. Vito paused. She told me he was laughing. Carmine stood up. He walked to the window. The city lay out below him, lights on, the permanent orange glow of a place that never entirely slept. Laughing, he said, at the woman on the floor. His pregnant wife. Silence. Outside, a car passed. Carmine watched its taillights until they were gone. Who's near the address right now? Nico and Salaron Merchant, 3 minutes out. Send them. And call Marcus. I don't care if he's off. Tell him I said. Carmine was already moving. I'll be there myself in 10 minutes. You don't have to come personally. Yes, Carmine said, picking up his jacket. I do. And the ambulance arrived at Mia's house 4 minutes after she sat down in Mr. Vito's chair. She watched through the window as the lights turned the street red and blue. 2 paramedics moved fast and professional, pulling equipment from the back, going through the door. Her father appeared on the porch. He had come outside when he heard the sirens, the way people do when something forces their hand. He stood with his arms crossed and watched the paramedics go in, and he looked, from Mia's distance, through the glass, like a man who was only now beginning to understand the size of what he had done. Then the cars came, 2 of them, black, with tinted windows. They pulled up to the curb without drama, one behind the other. The engines stopped. The doors opened. 4 men got out. Mia pressed her face closer to the glass. She didn't know any of them, but there was something about the way they moved, unhurried, deliberate, taking up exactly as much space as they needed, and not 1 inch more, that she found she couldn't look away from. Like men who had long since stopped needing to prove anything to anyone, and who found the whole idea of proving slightly beneath them. 3 of them spread out on the sidewalk, not moving toward the house, simply present, visible. The 4th walked up the porch steps. He was perhaps the smallest of the 4, but the other 3 oriented around him the way planets orbit something they can't help but be pulled toward. He wore a dark coat. He moved at a pace that was neither fast nor slow. He moved at the pace of someone who had nowhere else to be, because this, right here, was exactly where he had decided to be. He came to a stop directly in front of Mia's father. Her father put on his chest-out, chin-up stance. She recognized it. He used it whenever he wanted to look like he owned the room. At the dinner table when her mother disagreed with him. At the door when a neighbor came to complain about the noise. Whenever something arrived that he wanted to shrink before it could touch him. The man in the dark coat looked at him. Just looked at him. And whatever was in that look, whatever lived in it, she could see, even from across the street, and through glass and in the bad light, the exact moment her father's posture began to change. It happened slowly, the way a building settles before it leans. First, his shoulders came down, then his chin dropped by a fraction. Then his weight shifted back on his heels. The man spoke. She could not hear the words. His body gave nothing away. No raised hands, no aggressive lean, no change in volume. He was simply talking. The way someone talks who has made his point many times before and knows that the words alone are sufficient. Her father said something. She could see his lips moving, his hands coming up, a defensive gesture, patting a air, the body language of a man trying to redirect a conversation he was losing. The man in the dark coat let him finish. Then he continued, as if the interruption had not occurred. Her father's hands dropped. He looked at the porch railing. He looked at his own shoes. Then he said something very brief. 3 or 4 words. And his posture had finished collapsing entirely. He looked smaller, standing on his own porch, than she had ever seen him look in any room. The man in the dark coat looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded once. A small, final nod. The kind that means, we understand each other. And turned and walked back down the porch steps without looking back. The 4 men got back in their cars. 2 minutes later, they were gone. The street settled back into its ordinary quiet, as if they had never been. Her father stood on the porch alone. He did not move for a very long time, and even from across the street, through glass, in the dark, Mia could see that whatever had lived in him, that particular loudness, that particular size, had changed its shape. Whether it had gone entirely was a different question. But it had changed. She pressed her forehead against the glass and breathed. The paramedics were inside for 23 minutes. When they came out, they had her mother on a gurney. Mia was running across the street before the door of Mr. Vito's house had fully swung shut behind her. One of the paramedics caught her by the shoulders, not roughly, just stopping her forward motion. "Honey, are you her daughter?" "Yes." "Is she okay? Is the baby okay?" "We're taking her to Mercy General right now. She's stable. Her blood pressure is low, but we've got her on fluids. The baby's heartbeat is strong." The paramedic had the kind of voice that was designed for situations like this. Calm, without being falsely cheerful. "Is there an adult who can bring you to the hospital?" Mr. Vito appeared behind her. "I'll take her," he said. Her mother's head turned on the gurney. She found Mia's face across the short distance between them and her eyes. Still too wide, still too pale. Filled with something that was not quite relief but was reaching for it. "Mia," she said, "come here." Mia went to the side of the gurney. She grabbed her mother's hand. It was cold, clammy, the skin papery in a way that scared her. "Are you hurt?" Mia asked. "I'm going to be okay." Her mother's voice was thin. They said the baby's heartbeat is good. "You have to promise me." Her mother looked at her. "I promise you." A pause, a breath. "Mia, how did the ambulance get here?" "I went to get help." Her mother stopped. She looked at her for a long moment. The gurney stopped temporarily, while the paramedics managed something on the other side. In that moment, her mother's face did something complicated. Grief and love, and something that looked like it was trying to become pride. "You're so much braver than I gave you credit for," she whispered. "I'll be at the hospital soon," Mia said. Go." They loaded her mother into the ambulance. Mia held her hand until the last possible second, until the doors meant they had to stop. She stood on the sidewalk in her sneakers and her hoodie and watched the ambulance pull away. Mr. Vito stood beside her. "My father is still on the porch," she said. "I know." "What did those men say to him?" A pause. "That his behavior has been observed. That it will not be tolerated. That there are people in this neighborhood who take an interest in what happens within it, and those people will be watching." He paused again. "And that if your mother or you are ever harmed again, the next conversation will be a different kind." Mia processed this. "Will it work?" she asked. "For a while," Mr. Vito said honestly. "Whether it works permanently depends on him. Men like your father understand force better than reason. We gave him a reason to change, that he couldn't dismiss. Whether he does the actual changing is up to him. He looked down at her. That's the part that isn't up to us. She nodded. She looked at the empty space where the ambulance had been. Can we go to the hospital now? She asked. Yes, he said. Let's go. Mercy General smelled like antiseptic and floor wax, and the particular anxious stillness of a building full of people in trouble. Mr. Vito found them 2 seats in the waiting room, and he went to the vending machine and came back with a hot chocolate and set it in her hands without asking if she wanted it. She held it because it was warm. They waited. She looked at the floor tiles. She counted them twice and lost count both times. She listened to the PA system, calling names and codes she didn't understand. She watched a child across the room fall asleep in her mother's arms and thought about how unfair it was that some children could fall asleep in the middle of a waiting room and not think anything of it, could just close their eyes and let the world take care of itself for a while. She had never been that kind of child. She had always been the kind who listened through walls. At 2:12 in the morning, a nurse came out and found Mr. Vito's name on a list. Your party's mother is stable, she said, looking at Mia. She has a condition called placental abruption. The placenta has partially separated from the uterine wall. It can be extremely serious, but she came in when she did, and that made all the difference. The baby's heart rate is good. We'll monitor her closely over the next several days. Mia breathed. The baby, she said. She's okay? She's hanging on beautifully, the nurse said. Tough little thing, must run in the family. Mr. Vito, beside her, said nothing. But she felt something, not a touch, not quite. Like the weight of his attention shifting slightly toward her. Like approval. They led her into the room at 3 o'clock. Her mother was propped on pillows with monitors attached to her arms and her middle. An IV ran from her arm to a bag hanging above the bed. She looked smaller in the hospital bed than she did in real life. She also looked, for the first time in months, like the worst thing had already happened and hadn't killed her, and now she could breathe. Mia climbed into the chair, beside the bed without saying anything, and took her mother's hand. They sat like that for a while. The monitors beeped their steady, ugly music. A light somewhere down the hall hummed. You saved our lives, her mother said finally. I just ran across the yard. That's the same thing as saving our lives, Mia. Her mother's voice was rough, not quite steady. I need you to know that. What you did tonight, I don't think I have the right words. You don't have to say words. I know, but I want to. She turned her head on the pillow. When did you get so old? I'm 8. I know. Her mother almost smiled. You've been older than 8 for a while. Mia thought about that. She wasn't sure if it was a compliment or something to mourn. Maybe both. She had been watching through walls since she was 5, reading her father's moods like weather, the quality of his silences, the particular way he set down a glass, the difference between a tension that would blow over and one that would not. That kind of watching aged a person. She knew that. She also didn't know how to stop. What's going to happen? She asked. When we go home. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. The monitor beside her beeped its slow rhythm. Things are going to change, she said carefully. I don't know exactly how yet, but they are going to change. I promise you that. What if he doesn't change? Another silence, longer. Then we'll make different choices, her mother said. You and me. We'll figure it out together. She squeezed Mia's hand. But you are not going to keep living like this. I should have said that a long time ago. I'm saying it now. Mia looked at the window. Outside, it was still dark. Hours until morning. She could see the faint reflection of the hospital room in the glass. I used to think, Mia said slowly, that if I was good enough, it would help. If I kept my room clean and didn't make noise and got good grades, like maybe if everything else was okay, it would make the other stuff easier. Her mother looked at her, said nothing. It doesn't work like that, Mia said. No, her mother said. It doesn't. And I'm sorry you spent years trying to make it work. That was never your job. It was never supposed to be your job. Whose job was it? Her mother closed her eyes briefly. Mine, she said. To protect you. I kept telling myself it would get better on its own. Or that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, or that leaving would be worse. She opened her eyes. I was wrong. About all of it. Mia sat with that. Are we going to leave? She asked. I don't know yet, her mother said honestly. But I know that what happened tonight cannot happen again. And I know that for the first time in a long time, your father is scared of something other than his own pride. Which means this might be the real moment. She turned her head and looked directly at Mia. But even if he can't do it, you and I are going to be fine. Do you hear me? We are going to be fine. I know, Mia said. And she did know. For the first time, she actually knew it. Not as a hope, but as a fact. I believe you, she said. Her father came to the hospital the next afternoon. He stood in the doorway of the room holding a plastic bag from the hospital gift shop, a small teddy bear with a blue ribbon, a bunch of yellow flowers already slightly wilted from the shop's refrigerator case. He was wearing his good shirt, and his eyes were red around the edges, and he looked like he hadn't slept. He looked like someone else was wearing his face. Mia was in the chair by the window when he appeared. She looked at him. He looked at her. Hey, Bug, he said. She said nothing. He looked at her mother. Can I come in? Her mother said yes. Then she said, Mia, why don't you go get some breakfast from the cafeteria? I'll give you some money from my purse. Mia did not want to go. She looked at her mother, and her mother looked back at her with an expression that was both, please, and it's okay, and trust me, all at once. She went. She did not go to the cafeteria. She went 20 feet down the hall and stood with her back against the wall, just out of sight, and listened. She heard her father's footsteps as he came fully into the room. She heard the rustle of the plastic bag being set down. She heard him pull a chair. Then she heard him speak. I don't know how to start this, he said. A pause. I've been awake all night trying to figure out how to start this and I can't. So I'm just going to say it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I've done. Not just last night, all of it, everything. His voice was rough and slow, like the words were having to force their way through something. I know you've heard that before and it didn't mean anything. I know I don't have any credit left. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just... He stopped. A long pause. I'm telling you that men came to the house last night and they said things to me that I can't unhear. About what I've been doing. About what kind of man does what I've done. And sitting there on the porch after they left, I couldn't argue with any of it. I didn't have an argument. I just had excuses, and even those felt hollow. Her mother said nothing. I called a counselor this morning, he said. I have an appointment Thursday. I know that's... Daniel. Her mother's voice cut through quietly. I need you to understand something. I believe you mean what you're saying right now. I do. But meaning it right now and sustaining it are not the same thing. You have said sorry before. You have made promises before. So I am not going to promise you anything right now. I am going to watch. That is all I can offer you. A pause. That's fair, he said. That's completely fair. And Mia, I know. You don't know. She ran out of that house in the dark, alone, to get help, because she was terrified and she had no one else to turn to. Because she has never in her entire life felt like she could come to you when things went wrong. Our 8-year-old daughter went to a neighbor instead of her own father. Her mother's voice was low and clear and did not waver. That is not about last night. That is years of her learning that you are not safe. You have to understand that. You cannot apologize your way past that. You have to become someone different, over time, consistently, and let her learn that on her own terms. Silence. I know, he said again, but softer. Okay, her mother said. Then we'll see. Mia slid her back down the wall until she was sitting on the hospital floor. She pulled her knees up and pressed her chin to them. She thought, I don't know if I trust it. She thought, I don't know if I trust him. She thought, but she said we'll see. And that, at least, was not the same as nothing. If this story is touching your heart, please like this video and drop a comment below. Tell us what part got you. Tell us about a moment you found courage when you Didn't think you had it. Every comment helps more people find stories like this one. And this community is what keeps this work going. Carmine Battaglia came to Vito's house the following evening. He came alone, which was unusual, and he came in the late afternoon, when the light was going amber and long across the sidewalk. Vito let him in and made coffee, and they sat at the kitchen table the way men sit when they have known each other for a very long time. "How is the mother?" Carmine said. "Home as of this morning. The doctors want her on bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy, but the baby is measuring well." Vito wrapped his hands around his mug. "The husband is sleeping in the spare room. He started seeing a therapist." "You're doing?" "Partly. Mostly the visit seems to have genuinely frightened him." Vito looked at his coffee. "He's the kind of man who is used to being the scariest thing in the room. When he isn't anymore, he doesn't know what to do with himself." Carmine nodded. He turned his mug on the table, thinking. "Tell me about the girl again," he said. "Mia." "Yes." Vito considered. "She came to my door at 11:30 at night, alone, in the dark, with her shoes untied. She had gotten out of bed when her mother fell and assessed the situation and identified that her father was not going to help and that she needed to find someone who would. She went through the options available to her and chose me." He paused. "She has been watching that household, managing that household, in the way that children do when the adults around them aren't functioning. She knew exactly who to go to, and she went, even though she was terrified." Carmine drank his coffee. "What was she like? Sitting there, waiting?" he asked. "In the chair. Still. Very still." Vito thought about it. "Not numb. Present. She was frightened, but she was managing the fear, not the other way around. 8 years old. 8 years old." Carmine looked out the kitchen window at the street. An ordinary evening. A man walking a dog. Someone's music too loud from an upstairs window. "When I was 8, he said, "I was stealing apples from the market on Carver Street. I was frightened of my own shadow." He shook his head slightly. "Children who grow up the way she has grown up, they become something early. It isn't fair. It is frequently a waste. But sometimes," he paused considering, "sometimes it produces something in a person that nothing else does." "She'll be all right," Vito said. Not a wish, a statement. "She'll be more than all right." Carmine set down his mug. "Keep an eye on the situation. If the father slides back, I want to know." "And if he does?" Carmine looked at him calmly. "Then we have a different kind of conversation," he said. He stood. He walked to the window and looked down at the street for a moment, hands clasped behind him. "You know what I keep thinking about?" he said. Vito waited. "That she chose you." He turned from the window. "Out of everyone on that street, she chose your door. What does that tell you?" Vito thought about it. That she was watching. That she had been watching for a long time and had filed away what she observed. Yes. Carmine picked up his jacket. An 8-year-old girl with no resources and no power and every reason to freeze, and she chose correctly. She identified the one person on that street who could actually do something, and she went to him. He shook his head slightly, not in disbelief, but in something more like recognition. "That's not luck. That's assessment. That's intelligence under pressure. She's going to be someone when she's older." "She's already someone," Carmine said. He moved toward the door. "That's the thing people always say. She'll be someone. She'll do something. As if right now doesn't count. As if being 9 and running across a yard in the dark isn't already the thing." He paused at the door. "It counts, Vito. What she did counts. Today, as is. Not in 10 years. Vito nodded. "Give her my regards," Carmine said. "The next time you see her." "I will. Tell her that she should keep watching, the way she watches, and keep moving the way she moves." He opened the door to the afternoon light. The world needs people who do both. He walked out. Vito sat at the kitchen table for a while after he was gone with his cooling coffee, listening to the ordinary sounds of the street outside. Then he got up and found the second rake in the shed. He thought he'd leave it leaning against the fence for Saturday. The baby came on a Tuesday morning in late March. Mia was in the middle of a social studies quiz when the school secretary appeared in the classroom doorway and gestured to her teacher, and then her teacher looked at her and said, "Mia, you're wanted in the office." Mia stood up and her stomach went to water. She walked the length of the classroom, feeling every pair of eyes on her back, and went out into the hall. At the office, they handed her the phone. "Hey," her father's voice. She almost dropped the receiver. "She's here, the baby. She came this morning about an hour ago." Mia held the phone with both hands. "Is she okay?" "She's okay. He stopped. He made a sound she could not have predicted coming from him. Something pressed and wet, like he was fighting something. "She's perfect. She's really small, but they said that's normal. She's going to be fine. She's got..." Another pause. "She's got this dark hair, and she's got your mother's nose." Mia sat down in the office chair without being invited to. "And Mom?" "She's exhausted. She's great. She's asking for you." His voice had changed, not just in this moment, but from the last 6 months. Quieter. Slower. Like something that used to be wound tight had been let out a few turns. "They're going to excuse you from school. I'll come get you. Or, I'll walk," she said. "I know the way." She did not walk. She ran the last half-mile, sneakers slapping the sidewalk, her backpack bouncing. She ran through the hospital lobby and punched the elevator button 4 times and walked the corridor to the maternity wing faster than she had ever walked anywhere in her life. Her father was in the hallway outside the room. He stood up when he saw her coming. She looked at him. He looked at her. He said, "She's in there. She's been waiting for you." She said, "Okay." And then, because she was 8 years old and tired of carrying things alone, "Is she okay? Really?" "Really," he said. "Really okay." She went in. Her mother was propped up against a stack of pillows, her hair still damp from whatever had happened in the hours before Mia got there, and in her arms was a bundle. A very small bundle, the size of something Mia would have guessed couldn't possibly be a whole person. But it was a whole person. She could see the face, scrunched in pink, the tiny mouth working slightly. She could see the hands, impossibly small, curled against a yellow blanket. "Come here," her mother said. Mia crossed the room. She stood at the side of the bed and looked at her sister. Her sister was, objectively, the smallest thing she had ever seen. "She doesn't have a name yet," her mother said. "You waited?" "I waited." Her mother smiled, and it was the realest smile Mia had seen on her face in years, unguarded, not held back from something. "I thought you should be part of it. She would have been someone's if it weren't for you." Mia looked at the baby's face for a long time. "Hope," she said. Her mother didn't respond immediately. Mia could hear her breathing. "Hope," her mother repeated, testing it out, letting it fill the room. Then again, softer. "Yes," she said. "That's right. That's exactly right." Mia thought about that night many times in the months that followed. She thought about it the way you think about a dream that felt more real than being awake. Not in a way that was always painful, but in a way that was always present. The way a scar is present. A reminder of something that happened and changed you and will not unhappen. She thought about the darkness of the hallway, the cold of the back door handle, the wet grass under her sneakers. She thought about the way she had run without deciding to run. She thought about Mr. Vito's door opening. She had been scared, she remembered. She had been more scared than she had ever been in her life, and she had moved anyway. And on the other side of the moving was an ambulance and a hospital, and her sister's impossible, scrunched-up face, and the word hope said aloud in a room that needed it. She talked about it with Dr. Reyes, the school counselor she started seeing in the fall. Dr. Reyes had round glasses and a bowl of tangerines on her desk, and a way of listening that made Mia feel like what she said actually landed somewhere solid and mattered to someone. She had not expected to like the counseling sessions. She had expected them to feel like being observed, the way she sometimes felt at home, watched but not quite seen. Instead, they felt like the opposite, like the watching was careful and kind, and for her benefit rather than anyone else's. "How are things at home right now?" Dr. Reyes asked one afternoon. Mia thought about it honestly. She tried to be honest with Dr. Reyes because it seemed like the least she could offer in exchange for someone actually listening. "Better?" she said. "Different, not perfect." "That sounds accurate. My dad stopped drinking, or he says he did, and I haven't seen evidence of the other things, so." She looked at her hands. "I still check. Every time he comes in from work, I watch his face to see how he's doing before I know how to be." "That makes a lot of sense," Dr. Reyes said. "Your nervous system learned that it needed to do that. It doesn't unlearn overnight." "Does it ever unlearn?" "Yes. For most people, when the environment becomes consistently safe, the nervous system relaxes. It takes time." She paused. "Do you feel safe?" Mia thought about it carefully. Her sister laughing in the kitchen, a sound she had never heard before this year. Her mother coming home from the clinic with news about her patients. The evenings that were just evenings now, no longer things to brace for. "More than before," she said. "Yeah, that's real progress. A lot of kids in situations like yours don't get to say that." "I know." She picked at the edge of her sleeve. "I think about that sometimes. The ones who don't have a Mr. Vito next door. The ones who knock on the wrong door or don't knock at all. What do you feel when you think about them?" She considered. "Sad. And also like, I need to do something with the luck. Like it's not fair to just have it and not use it somehow." Dr. Reyes looked at her over her glasses. "What does using it look like?" "I don't know yet," Mia said. "I'm 9. I'll figure it out." Dr. Reyes smiled. "I believe you will." Later, she asked about that night. "What did it feel like?" Dr. Reyes asked. "That moment when you decided to run?" Mia thought about it carefully. "I didn't decide," she said. "I just ran. My body did it before I finished thinking about it." "And what do you think that means?" "I think—" She stopped, reformulated. "I think maybe courage isn't something you think about first. I think it's something you just do. And then afterward, you look back and realize you were brave. But in the moment, you're just moving." Dr. Reyes looked at her over the top of her glasses for a long moment. "That," she said, "is one of the most accurate things I've ever heard about courage." Mia stored that away with the other things she was slowly collecting. Mr. Vito's voice, "Patience is better than chasing." Her mother's voice, "You are not going to keep living like this." The nurse at the hospital, "Tough little thing, must run in the family." She was 9 now. She had started keeping a journal. She wrote in it every night. The way she had learned to process things, by putting them into words, even imperfect words, even words that did not quite reach all the way to what she meant. She wrote about the night in September. She wrote about Hope's birth. She wrote about watching her father change, slowly, imperfectly, in the way real change happens. Not as a transformation, but as a slow erosion of old patterns and the slow, uncertain building of new ones. She wrote about her mother going back to work at the pediatric clinic and the way her mother's face was different now. Lighter, somehow, more fully her own. She wrote about the black cars in the street and the man in the dark coat and what it had felt like to watch her father's posture break from across the street in the dark. She wrote, "I don't know who those men were. I don't know if what they do is right or good or what my teachers would say about it. I don't think the world is simple enough for a clean answer about that. But I know that they came when Mr. Vito called. And I know that my mother and my sister are alive. And I know that my father looks at us differently now. So I just have what happened. And what happened is that someone listened to an 8-year-old girl and took her seriously enough to act." She paused, looked at what she had written. She added, "I want to be someone who does that. I want to be someone who, when a scared kid shows up at the door in the dark, opens it." On a Saturday afternoon in November, she helped Mr. Vito rake leaves in the yard. She had started doing this without being asked, just showing up on weekends with her old sneakers and a willingness to be there. He kept a second rake in the shed that he now left leaning against the fence for her. which she took as a kind of welcome even though neither of them said anything about it. They worked in the comfortable quiet that she had come to think of as particular to him. Not the silence of someone with nothing to say, but the silence of someone who understood that not everything needed to be filled. She had grown up in a house full of noise that had nothing in it. This was the opposite. The leaves were deep this year, rust and gold, smelling of cold and wet. They raked in long, even strokes, and the pile at the edge of the yard grew steadily. After a while, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "The man who came that night, the one in the coat." She raked a slow line through the leaves without looking up. "Who is he?" Mr. Vito was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of avoiding an answer, but the quiet of considering how much of a true answer he could give. "He's someone who takes an interest in this neighborhood," he said, "and in the people in it. He's been doing so for a long time." "Does he do good things or bad things?" Another pause, longer. "Both," Mr. Vito said finally. "Over a long career, both. I won't pretend otherwise, and I won't ask you to. But he helped my mom?" "Yes." "Why? She's nobody. To him. We're just people who live on a street." Mr. Vito stopped raking. He rested both hands on the handle and looked at the pile of leaves they had built together. "Because an 8-year-old girl ran across a yard in the dark," he said, "and that meant something to him. Because in his experience, and in mine, that kind of courage is rare. Not uncommon because people don't have it. Uncommon because people don't act on it. They feel it and they freeze. Or they talk themselves out of it, or they wait for someone else to go first." He glanced at her sideways. "You didn't wait. You moved." "I was terrified," Mia said. "I know. He knows. That's precisely the point." He resumed, raking, slow and even. "He would tell you that he didn't do you a favor. He would say that you made it possible by moving first, and that everything that followed was built on that. The ambulance, the intervention, the conversation with your father, all of it started with you deciding to run," Mia raked. In silence for a moment, thinking. "I didn't decide," she said. "I told Dr. Reyes that. I just ran." "Yes," Mr. Vito said. "That's what deciding looks like from the inside. It feels like you didn't choose. But you did. You chose not to stay in the room. You chose not to go back to bed. You chose to go somewhere and do something. That's the choice. It doesn't feel like a choice because it happens so fast, because the fear and the action are happening at the same time." He paused. "But it is a choice, and you made it." She thought about that for a long time. "Does he know about me?" she asked. "Like, does he know what happened after?" "He asked me about you when I saw him last month," Mr. Vito said. "He wanted to know how things were at the house." "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That things are different. That your mother is working. That your father is trying." He glanced at her. "That you are doing very well." Mia felt something warm move through her chest at that. She wasn't entirely sure why. "You sound like a fortune cookie," she said after a moment. The corner of his mouth moved in what was, definitely this time, an actual smile. "That's incredibly rude," he said. "I'm 9, she said. "I'm allowed." She grinned. She kept raking. Before the end of this story, if it moved you, if it stayed with you, if any part of it reminded you of your own courage or someone you love, please consider supporting this channel by buying us a cup of coffee using the link in the description below. It keeps the lights on and the stories coming. We are so grateful for every single one of you who has made it this far. Winter settled hard and fast that year. The first snow came in mid-December and stayed. Mia spent Christmas morning in the living room with Hope on her lap, the baby now 9 months old and already trying to figure out how to crawl, pushing up onto her hands, looking extremely pleased with herself, then collapsing and starting over. She was a patient person, Hope, methodical. She would fall and reconsider and try again, without apparent frustration, as many times as it took. She was going to be interesting, Mia thought. Her father had gotten them a tree this year. He had asked if they wanted one. Asked, not announced, which was still something Mia was adjusting to. And they had said yes, and he had brought home a small, lopsided one that smelled strongly of pine. And he and Mia had stood it up in the corner and put lights on it, and it had looked somehow exactly right. Not perfect. Not like a picture, but theirs. Her mother was in the kitchen making breakfast, moving slowly because her body still remembered the hospital, still reminded her sometimes at the end of long days. But she was moving, and she was smiling at something on the radio, and she was here. She was here, and she was okay, and Hope was here and okay, and that was something Mia would never stop understanding the full weight of. She looked at her father. He was on the floor across the room, building something with blocks for Hope to knock over. He had gotten good at the knock down and rebuild cycle. He rebuilt without irritation, steady and patient, and every time Hope knocked it down, she made a sound of absolute delight. And something in his face, when she did that, something Mia had never seen there before, looked like a man recognizing something he hadn't known he wanted. He was not the same man he had been. She knew that. She also knew she would be watching for a long time. Not because she was waiting for him to fail, but because watching carefully was how she knew anything about the world, and old habits were slow things to set down. But she was watching something different now. She was watching him try, and that, she was slowly learning, was its own kind of evidence. On New Year's Eve, they stayed home. Sparkling grape juice in real glasses. Even Mia had one. And the ball drop on TV, and Hope asleep in her father's arms by 11, which was the latest she had ever been up, and a personal record that Mia felt sure Hope was very pleased with even in her sleep. Mia sat on the couch with her legs tucked under her and looked at her family. She did this sometimes now, this deliberate looking. Not the watchful, anxious monitoring she had done for years. The surveillance that exhausted her and kept her always slightly braced. This was different. This was just looking. Taking inventory of something she wanted to remember. Her mother with her feet up on the coffee table and a cup of tea balanced on her knee. Her father on the armchair with Hope curled against his chest. His big hands spread across her tiny back, rising and falling with her breathing. The small Christmas tree still in the corner, its lights blinking in their slow, uneven way. The room smelled like pine, and something her mother had baked earlier. Outside, it was snowing again. Had been snowing on and off for 2 days, and the street was quiet in the way streets get quiet under snow, muffled, hushed, like the world was trying to be careful. She thought about the year. She thought about September, the crash of breaking glass, the hallway in the dark, her mother on the floor. She thought about running. She thought about a door opening. She thought about the hospital waiting room, the cup of hot chocolate in her hands, the nurse saying, if she hadn't come in when she did, it would have been a different conversation. She thought about Hope, the impossible smallness of her, the dark hair, the scrunched pink face. The word she had chosen, hope. She had chosen it because it was the truest thing she knew how to say. When the countdown started, Mia looked around the room one more time. Her mother beside her, warm and solid, alive. Her father holding her sister, careful in a way he hadn't been before. Hope oblivious to all of it, tucked against his chest, with her mouth slightly open, utterly certain of her safety. Utterly unaware of how close it had been. 10, 9, 8. Mia thought about the yard, the dark, the wet grass cold through her untied sneakers. 7, 6, 5. She thought about a fist against a door. 4, 3, 2. She thought about, come inside. 1. The room exploded into noise. Her mother pulled her into a hug, warm and tight and real. Across the room, her father, who had not woken Hope despite the noise, caught Mia's eye over the sleeping baby's head. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he gave her a nod, short, quiet, one person acknowledging another. She nodded back. Outside, fireworks were going off somewhere distant, muffled by snow and distance and the late hour. She could see the brief flashes of light through the window, blooming red and gold and then fading, turning the fallen snow strange colors for a moment before they were gone. She watched them for a long time. She was 9 years old. She had already done the bravest thing she had ever done. She had gotten out of a bed at 11:30 at night and run across a yard and knocked on a door in the dark without knowing what was on the other side. She didn't know what came next. She couldn't see it yet. That was okay. She had learned, finally, permanently, in a way she would carry for the rest of her life, that you don't need to see it, you just need to move. You put one foot in front of the other in the dark. You knock on the door that's in front of you, and you trust that something will be on the other side. And if something isn't, you find the next door. But sometimes, if you are very scared and very brave, and you move anyway, someone opens it, and everything begins from there. That was enough. That would always be enough.